Hey, welcome to CryptoCoach365, day 92. Mike Tozoni here. You'll have to excuse me, I have a weird reaction to the light, so if I'm a little fidgety, that's why. So, second day in Chicago, getting coaching from JT Foxx. It's been freaking amazing so far. And yesterday I talked about why coaching is important. Today, as promised, I wanted to go over a couple of things that I've learned from today's coaching. I've literally I have pages and pages of notes. A lot of them are marked off as tasks that I need to do, or things I need to get back to, or things that I need to do with my business partner back home. And it's been incredible. But one thing though I want to kind of first point out. So I've mentioned JT Foxx. He's my business coach, and he advertises himself as the world's #1 wealth coach and the world's #1 business coach. And I mentioned I'm very lucky to have him. But bit of an issue is that if you were to search for JT Foxx on Google or whatever, you'll probably not find much good about it, unfortunately. And the reason is that a lot of people who go to see his presentations, and they don't really understand what it is that he sells. So before I go into a couple of things that I wanted to touch on in my notes, I want to kind of explain who exactly JT Foxx is. So JT, he kind of in short, how I explain it is that he gets access to some of the world's top people, top business people, stars, actors, successful people, and coaches. And then he kind of packages that access that he gets for himself and redistributes it to the people who end up joining his network. So if you were just to go to his presentation, you'd probably get a lot of information from just all the things that he's learned, how to run your business, how to do sales, how to market, what kind of problems to avoid, what kind of decisions to make, how to make decisions, how to plan your life, plan your time, all kind of different topics. But at the end of the day, he then offers you things to buy. It's more access to higher levels, more access to his house, his people, personal coaching, specific coach training sessions, stuff like that. And a lot of people tend to get upset because they're like, well, apparently this was all just a sales thing and I have to buy more and more products, and they're gonna get pissed off. You do still get a lot of information before then, but the thing with JT though and his organization is that the information that they teach you at the very beginning, that's just that's training. That's the very basic stuff to start. That's not the next level that you get with him if you actually buy what he's selling. It's not just information, it's really access to some of the top people in the world. And I'm going to drop some names on you guys, and you're not going to know who the names are, but I'll explain who they are. So some of the people that he gives access to that that have trained him and taught him things that he trains and teaches other people that come to see him as well, that I have actually met personally. Most of them, not all of them, but the people who he gives access to and the people who he learned himself from, which is why he's the #1 wealth coach. So one name some people might recognize is George Ross. George Ross, you may recognize him from the Apprentice TV series, but George was actually Donald Trump's right-hand man for over 40 years. And a lot of the biggest deals that Donald Trump has actually put together, the big real estate deals, were done with or by George Ross's help. So George Ross is basically Donald Trump, he kind of made his name recently as a president and unfortunately destroyed his brand. But he has made his brand as the top real estate investor in the world. Like if you wanted to think of like who has the biggest buildings, the most flashy stuff, like biggest real estate investor you can think of, you'd probably think of Donald Trump. And the guy behind Donald Trump, or the guy working as his right-hand man, who was like Donald would give him like bounce his ideas off of, was George Ross. And George Ross is JT Foxx's personal friend. He's like JT probably think of him as his father or something. So like if somebody like of George Ross's caliber decides to stay with him, even though like when JT first asked him to coach him, people were calling George saying, don't do it, don't do it. JT's like this weird, like he's a scammer, he's a shyster, he's like, don't do it. George looked at JT, figured it out, and like figured himself out on his own, and he trusts JT, and they're really good friends now, because again, people who just Googled JT only found the complaints about the sales. They didn't actually understand what he was doing. So George is one of them, like top real estate guy who does quite a lot of other business type consulting as well. Another name you might actually not know about him is Mark Anthony Bates. He's kind of a strange one. It's that you don't know who Mark Anthony Bates are. Everybody at the very, very, very top does, and the reason is that he stays private, but he works through referrals, and he gets referred by a lot of the top people. So he basically, he's a coach's coach, what they call him, I guess. He coaches and trains the very, very top speakers, the top business people. Like some of the people he's trained and coached and worked with were Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic and the Virgin brand name. Tony Robbins, I'm sure you've heard of him before. He's a big speaker. He's worked and coached U.S. presidents. He's worked and coached with like international dignitaries, looking at this stuff. Diplomatic organizations, world leaders, like he coached a lot of the very, 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 very top people. And like the reason we don't really hear about him is because he likes to stay private, and he's kind of like the private personal secret of the very, very rich who like refer him back to and force to each other. Like if you need help, if you need to learn how to speak, if you need some feedback on your business, if you need some coaching, talk to that guy, because like he knows his stuff. So, and another guy that recently joined, and yeah, Mark Anthony Bates is one of the coaches who coaches JT and who JT has coached everybody else. In fact, last time I was at JT's house, a bunch of us were there. We were talking and getting coaching, and Mark Anthony Bates was there too, providing coaching. And then like we literally just hung out in the hotel lobby until 2 in the morning, just kind of bouncing ideas back and forth and just getting personal coaching from this guy. So like the guy who taught and coached Richard Branson and other like top entrepreneurs, and we get to hang out with him and just like shoot the crap until 2, or actually it was until 4 in the morning at a hotel lobby. I mean, like crazy. Another guy that JT recently added to his coaching team is Mike Slade. Again, Mike Slade is a name you probably have not heard of. I've never heard of him before, but Mark Slade is the guy who coached Steve Jobs, who I'm sure you've known, and basically did a lot of the coaching to help Steve rebuild his Apple company back. And he, after leaving Steve Jobs, he coached Bill Gates, and he's friends with both of them. And right now, he since Steve unfortunately passed, Mike Slade has been Bill Gates' friend for a very long time. Like they basically play either golf or tennis or one of those like once a week, and they just hang out. And so this is a guy who helped. Like there's guys, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, who built Microsoft and Apple, backwards. And then Mike Slade is the guy who coached him on like how to build Microsoft and Apple. I mean, it was like, you know, the top of the top again. And again, Mike Slade is friends with and personal coach of JT Foxx, who since he's new, JT is still trying to convince him to come and coach JT students directly. So he's still working on that. But everything that Mike Slade has been teaching JT has been like learning, absorbing, and passing on down to us. So basically, with JT Foxx, you can go to his you can go to his speeches, you can go to his seminars, you can learn from him, knowing that he learned from the very, very, very top people in the world. And he'll try to sell you stuff, and you can get angry, and like you can learn some stuff, but then get angry when he sells you and just walk away or whatever. Or you can join it, and if you understand what the heck that the whole concept is going on and what he's talking about, you can join him and get direct access to these kind of people. Like, it's crazy. I mean, at this point, I have like 2 degrees of separation, I guess, to the president of the United States through like 2 or 3 different people just because I joined this organization. Like, crazy. And like, I guess 1 or 2 degrees of separation to Steve Jobs. Steve Wozniak, he's an Apple co-founder, also JT's friend, by the way, a big Bitcoiner too, so yay for our side. So yeah, the reason JT Foxx is the #1 wealth coach and business coach in the world is because he gets coaching from the very, very top coaches in the whole world. And then people who go to see him and learn from him end up getting coaching from, like, a relayed coaching from the very best top coaches in the whole entire world. So with regards to the notes that I've taken, I have them up here. Unfortunately, there were, it was 2 days. It was very early morning to late dawn, very, very, very long days, quite a lot of information. And like I said, I have like pages of notes. A lot of them are kind of more instructional on how, like, these are the kind of things you need to do if you want to sell. So like, follow these steps, don't do this. Focus on these kind of things, and then like these are the top 10 points you want to do if you want to create a sale, how to answer objections, how to plan for objections, stuff like that. Or if you have a business partner, like, these are the things you need to do, and this is how you structure it, and like a lot of very, very detailed stuff. So I'm not going to go into those detailed things, but I kind of wanted to touch on some of the kind of more general, like, words of wisdom, I guess you could call it, that kind of touched things personally for me, like or applied to me or something, or thing that I found most interesting. So one interesting thing that JT mentioned is that opportunities are never lost, they just go to someone else. Usually, like, when I think about just people in general and opportunities, and it's a very unfortunate thing that I've seen many, many, many times in my life, is that there are opportunities coming in, like, everywhere. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. Well, there are some parts that are a little harder than others, obviously, but opportunities arrive all the time. Maybe not daily, maybe not weekly, but they happen. The main problem is that most people never actually notice them, or they dismiss them, or they're afraid to take them. Like, the biggest one 7 or 8 years for me was Bitcoin. It was an opportunity that I found through somebody posting a tweet. There was an artist that wrote an online comic series. I followed the online comic. I liked the artist. I read a tweet. He mentioned Bitcoin. I was like, what the heck is this? I read into it, and instead of dismissing it as this is just crap, I actually researched it, figured it out, and thanks to that, I was able to understand it. So back in early 2011, I read about Bitcoin, I understand it, I get it, and I invest in it and put all my effort behind it. Whereas a lot of people, they also heard about it, but they dismissed it as like, well, this obviously doesn't make sense, without even looking into it or studying it or any of that kind of stuff. So basically, like millions of people have missed out on a Bitcoin opportunity. Then they heard it about again, they still missed out on it. They heard it about again, they missed out on it. And it's the same for a lot of other opportunities out there too. Like real estate was apparently a huge opportunity after 2008 because real estate was dirt cheap and available all over the place, but most people missed out on it because they were afraid, and as soon as something crashes, people usually run the other way. In this case, and yeah, I was always like, well, you know, opportunities come and people miss them. This is kind of a twist on that, where opportunities, they're never missed. They don't go away. Somebody else picks them up. So opportunities, they don't fizzle out. There are people out there who spend time to research this stuff and understand stuff. Just research and understand things in general, just so that if an opportunity comes their way, when it does, they can recognize it and go for it instead of dismiss it. And actually, one of the probably another thing that he mentioned, one of the biggest important differences between US and other countries in regards to why US is so successful is because in other countries people are very skeptical. In US, we kind of just like go at it and see what happens. We are a lot more willing to take risks. So do that. Don't be a skeptic. Do research. Don't get into scams. Make sure you understand what the heck you're doing. But instead of being skeptical and dismissing things outright, look into it, figure it out, and you know, take a chance. Worst thing that can happen is you'll learn a very good lesson. So the next one was. And this one I actually talk quite a lot. And unfortunately, this is one that pisses a lot of people off. Only 3% of people succeed, not because it's hard, but because they're not willing to do what it takes. I see this all the time. There's people like most, and I'm like I said, this pisses people off. Most people who are stuck in low income or middle class or not, kind of like trapped, crappy situations, the reason they're there, it's because they don't want to do what it takes. So opportunity is there, as I mentioned. Opportunity is there, information is there. You can learn about how to fix your life. You can learn about how to manage your money. You can learn about how to do business. Yes, it's harder to do yourself, but you can do it. Unfortunately, that takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. For example, with my parents, my brother and I, we were still in school. My parents reached a plateau in their microbiology field. They couldn't earn anymore. So these are like they were like in their 40s, 50s, or late 40s or so. People raising 2 children who are still going to school, working full-time jobs. We didn't have a lot of money, so my mom would come back and she would cook meal from scratch every evening for us. Dad would do other things, and while they're doing all this, you'd say, well, you got 2 kids, you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of time, you have to cook meals, you have to clean up. While doing this, they still had the time to take classes in the evening on programming, software development, because they knew that that is a field that would give them a lot more opportunity. And they worked really hard, sometimes until midnight or later, and just busted their butts for years and years and years, well, 2 or 3 or 4 years, until they learned this stuff in order to actually qualify for a job and move up and completely switch their careers, like stuff they have never done or even thought of doing before. They found an opportunity, they figured out that this would be the good way to go, and they did what it takes to actually do it. And it was not easy, definitely not easy. For me, I mentioned I had my history before. I also had a lot of struggles, I guess, in life. I mean, I came from, when I moved out on my own, it was very, very hard. But I ended up doing what it takes, as opposed to just sitting in my butt and complaining. Unfortunately, most of the time when I see people complain about hardships, they complain about not having a lot of time while they sit around watching TV or playing video games. They complain about not having enough money or resources while they spend their money on dining out or buying more video games. And it's just people are just not willing to do what it takes. And those who are willing to sacrifice are the ones who succeed. This one kind of was interesting. JT's advice is not to have business partners because business partners cause issues. Don't partner with other businesses too because egos come into play. If there's somebody else who does what you need to do, have not a partnership but maybe a contractual agreement, or just do what they do on yourself and kick their butt because you can be better than them. But what he said is business partners will fight back when they're put up against a wall. And the partner who does less usually think that they do more. Basically, the partner who doesn't really contribute much ends up like a lot of times ego comes into play, and then they start thinking that they're the ones who do a lot more of it. The reason this is a little awkward and quirky for me was because I feel like I do quite a lot in a real estate business, but then kind of like check your ego. I delegate a lot of my work to my business partner, Eric. And like the first thought is like, well, yeah, obviously I do more. My partner is the one who thinks he does more, but he actually does less. But in this case, I'm thinking actually my partner, Eric Goodwin, is probably doing a lot more in the real estate side than I am. So keep your ego in check, because when you hear something like this, you might be the guy being talked about. So yeah, thank you, Eric, for everything you do. You're freaking awesome. Keep it up. Let's see. For most people, opportunity dictates their loyalty. What you should do is your loyalty should dictate your opportunity. So what this means is that people will work with a business, they work with you, while they're getting an opportunity, they're getting paid, but as soon as there's a different opportunity, there's a good chance that they might stab you in the back. And unfortunately, there's kind of a stereotype. Don't know if it's true or not. I suspect it's not. Like it seems like it's true when you're at the bottom. When you move up, it's not quite. People believe that business, like the wealthy and the rich and the wealthy businessmen and stuff, they're very ruthless. They fight each other. They'll stab you. They steal. They lie. They cheat, and that's how they get to the top. What I found on my way up is that's absolutely not true. Those who get to the very top, as I mentioned, they can't do it alone. The way you build a big business is through partnering with other people. And if you stab others in the back, if you're not loyal, if you screw people, nobody's going to want to work with you. And a business cannot work by itself. Like, for example, Amazon is the richest business in the world right now. How well do you think Amazon would work if it started screwing all of the people who are actually selling on Amazon? Nobody would want to sell through Amazon. Microsoft, gigantic company. A lot of the stuff that Microsoft sells isn't actually made by Microsoft. Microsoft needs to have business relationship where they treat their customers and other business customers or partners well in order for the partners to continue to want to work with them. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, like one of the things that JT mentioned was all the people that you meet on your way up, you're going to meet on the way down too. So if you screw people, like you get up to the very top and then you screw people, they're all going to screw you right back on the way back down. So yeah, loyalty is extremely important. If you work with somebody, don't screw them. If you even if you make a handshake deal with somebody in business, honor the handshake. Like even if you didn't sign it, just have integrity. Have loyalty, because you need other people to work with you in order to succeed. And if you screw people, they'll just screw you right back. If you screw people, you'll actually advertise to the rest of the world that you're the kind of person who it's okay for others to screw back as well. So just don't do it. Next one was success does not build character, it reveals it. Not just success, but money in general. So people say like money corrupts or absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, maybe for power, I don't know, but with regards to success and money, a lot of people think like money is the root of all evil. When somebody earns a whole lot of money, they'll like it can turn them really bad. I mean, honestly, that's just no, not true either. Just like the previous one, opportunity dictates. Like for most people, like the people at the top, loyalty dictates opportunity. It's the same deal. People who are assholes when it comes to just general, they will be assholes when they have money. People who are very good, altruistic, and work for stuff and, do good when they don't have money, if they manage to turn what they're doing into a wealth-making thing, then they'll still be good when they actually have a lot of money. So if you see somebody with a lot of money and they seem like an asshole, chances are they were an asshole before they made a lot of money. If you see somebody with a lot of money who's good, or somebody who's, well, without money, you can kind of hide whether you're like your true nature, I guess. But once you get a lot of money, gets a little bit harder to do because you get tempted by opportunities that might involve stabbing somebody in the back. So anyway, he mentioned the recipe for success: preparation plus practice plus persistence equals success. Keyword there for me is persistence. As I mentioned, that's how I got where I am, one step in front of the other, one step in front of the other, one day at a time. Keep doing, keep doing, keep doing. Don't quit, just keep doing. Eventually you'll get there. Like I said, that's how I got my degrees. Day after day, one step in front of the other. That's how I got my education. That's how I got my investing. Like, markets might go to hell. Just keep doing it. Real estate, it might give you a whole lot of headaches. Just keep doing it. The reason 9 out of 10 businesses fail is because they don't keep doing it. Like, even if 9 out of 10 businesses fail, as I said, start 10 businesses. You'll have one that'll succeed. Next one was, don't learn from other people's success, learn from their failures. Learn from their success too, but this was kind of interesting that like you can actually learn a lot more from a failure than from a success, because if somebody succeeds, for one, you're not going to really learn why they succeed, because they're going to say, well, I did this, but was that really true? And two, a lot of times you're probably not going to pay attention to the success part of it, but you will pay attention to the failure part of it. And to me, this was kind of important because guess what? I am doing a public video blog, I guess. I am talking about my life, and I will be talking about my failures because I have had failures, quite a lot of them, and I feel that you guys will probably learn a lot better if I talk about my failures, so that my mess ups you can learn from and you don't repeat either. And that includes one of the things that was mentioned: don't use your own money because you will eventually run out of your own money. Guess what? We had to put a pause on my real estate because we got 9 properties in 6 months. I did not focus on raising money from others as much as I should have, and I ran out of my own money. I mean, I didn't run out of my own money. I still have a lot of money, but I'm at a point where I am concerned that if I spend any more money on real estate, I will not have money on the big projects that are a top priority for me. So I'm having to really hold on tight. And what happened is we were going fast. We were plowing through it. We got 9 properties in 6 months. And then we hit a wall, basically. Slam, stop, we can't move forward. Why? Because I slacked off and I didn't know where to go to get other people's money. I got too comfortable, and because I had my own money, it was very convenient to just whip out my bank account and be here you go, here you go, here you go, as opposed to talk to people, get rejected, talk to people, get rejected, write up pitches, write up proposals, present to people get rejected. And that's business is going to be a lot of rejection with a couple of yeses, and those yeses are the ones that are pay off. So that was one thing that screwed us up. The other one was sometimes the deal you don't do is the best deal you do all year. Some of those 9 properties I mentioned, we would probably have been better off if we did not do them, because I mean, they're all profitable potentially, but some of them are almost like Rubik's cubes, where you have this thing and it's like, here's a house, it's great, you buy it, you fix it, you flip it, you sell it. When you get into it, when we got into it, we found out that there's a whole lot of issues where we have to jump through a whole lot of hoops and think completely out of the box how to redesign this property to make it work. Fortunately, there's still a lot of money in the property, assuming we don't take too long to fix these issues, and sometimes we have to move with the speed of government, permissions, zoning, other stuff. But once it's sold, we are still going to make money on it. But we are going to make money on it, but there's still a lost opportunity cost where our money is still tied in this property, whereas we could have would have been a lot better off if we had walked away from that property and actually put money into something better, flipped it without issues, sold it, flipped another one without issues, sold it, and so on. So it did actually hurt us. I don't know if it actually hurt us in profit, because like in one of the properties, the profit is pretty huge. Whereas if we flipped it, it may not have been as huge, but it's just going to take us a very long time to get that profit back out. Another one, and this is kind of weird, and it's actually counterintuitive. JT says, sell it, then build it. And a lot of JT's products are kind of like that. He comes up with ideas, just looking at other things that are around the world, comes up with an idea, and then he pitches and sells it. He sells it to his clients. I'm recording this on the phone, so once it gets to a specific file size, it kind of has to stop and have to start again, so apologies for that. But sell it and build it. Come up with the idea, figure out how to sell it, pitch it, sell it. If enough people are interested in it, then you build it and you sell it. So JT does this with a lot of his training things. Like he comes up with like, what if I train people on this kind of stuff, or I create this kind of product? If people want it, then he hires people or tasks people to actually put it together and sell it. He's not the only one who does that. Biggest example of this is Tesla. The Tesla car came up with an idea, and it pre-sold like thousands or hundreds of thousands of cars before the cars were actually made. Same with the Boring Company's flamethrower. That thing was like sold a lot of them before they even actually made the flamethrowers. And a lot of people actually do this. They sell, or in companies, come up with a product, pitch it, sell it. If there's enough people interested in it, they use the money that they raised, build a product, and then sell it off to the people. And if there's not enough interest, well, they just return the funds saying, sorry, we can't make it, and that's it. Actually, just remember, Patreon is a big, not Patreon, I'm sorry, Kickstarter is big, basically the big concept of that. In Kickstarter, a lot of people sell their ideas, raise money for the product that they're selling. Once they get the money, then they put together the product and sell it. And if the product doesn't raise money, then nobody gets it. So yeah. Another one, this was actually one that I started. I was taught almost from the beginning, and I've actually started and I've been doing it. A lot of people know a to-do list. I've shown you my little black book where I have a list of tasks and list of big projects. There's also one thing that JT teaches is a stop doing list. Like, nobody thinks about this, nobody does that, but it's a really good idea. So stop doing list is basically a list of things that you have a habit of, or that you might do every day, or that you do once in a while, that are not good for business or that are interfering with your life. So for myself, the two main big ones that I mentioned were stop eating fast food because it's convenient, but it's just not healthy, and I really need to manage my health and avoid sodium and some other things. And the other one is stop staying up past midnight, because that's another problem. I stay up past midnight, then I can't get up in the morning, or I'm too groggy and stuff. But there's a lot of other ones, but like these are just minor examples. So they're just like, stop doing lists that you put together on a list. If there's a bad habit, put it on there, and then just try your best to stick with it. If you can't, persistence, stick with it. If you fail, get back into it. If you fail, get back into it. Eventually you'll work it as a habit. You can have good habits, you can have bad habits, turn it into a, like, not doing it as a good habit, or catching yourself from not doing it. Anyway, next big one was ego, pride, and greed kill business. Again, kind of the same topic of like businesses are greedy and the wealthy are greedy and stuff. Yeah, greed is good if you listen to the Wall Street speech, in that we all want to achieve more, we all want to build more, we all want to make our business take that extra step, or our personal lives, whether that's greed for knowledge, greed for love, greed for family. Everybody is like greedy for something. They want more of something, and I think that's good, because that's how we get better. That's how the world builds and improves. I think in this case, greed is more taking too much more for yourself than than you I guess should, but to the, I guess, detriment of, say, your business partners or your customers, or the business itself. But as I mentioned earlier, people think of like greedy businessmen, greedy rich people, but you can't succeed in business if you're like that. You are gonna fail. And I mean, this is a guy who gets coaching from the very top of the very top, who have built other very top, or coached those who have built their other like top businesses in the world. And he, from his experience, and I'm telling you from my experience too, I am an entrepreneur. I'm in an entrepreneurial sphere, the whole Bitcoin thing. I have seen a lot of startups and a lot of small businesses die because people who were working in there had too much ego, had too much pride, and had too much greed. They spent money on crap they weren't supposed to, most of them themselves. There was ego and infighting. There was people who did not listen to suggestions because they knew better, so they had too much pride. And those people don't succeed. Those businesses fail. Kind of a side note, I also mentioned the kind of the number one thing for venture capitals when you're investing in business. Don't invest in the idea, invest in the people. That's kind of why too. Because crappy people will destroy a great idea, whereas great people with a bad idea, you can fix the bad idea. You can't fix the people. Well, you can fix the people, but it's not easy. So yeah, ego, pride, and greed kill business. People at the top don't really have a lot of ego and pride and greed, and well, except for, as I mentioned, getting your business to the next step. So main thing is keep that stuff in your head and check yourself. If you have too much ego, check yourself. You might be like, holy crap, I did so well, I made a crap ton of money. Like, this is probably very common among people who make their first million. Holy shit, I'm first million, pardon my language. I'm a millionaire now. I did really well. I kick ass. And then like nobody else, like, I don't care what you're gonna tell me because I know what to do because I made my first million. Next thing you know, their business goes to crap because they didn't listen to advice. People just abandon them because they turn into a-holes, and they stop learning from their own mistakes. So yeah, keep your ego in check, keep your pride in check, keep your greed with regards to taking away from others who are working with you at least in check, or those who are supporting you. And the last one, this one I actually thought was very interesting. JT said that practice makes perfect is wrong. There's a very common saying, at least in US, practice makes perfect. In reality, it's practice makes permanent, because if you practice it the wrong way, you will permanently learn how to do it the wrong way. So practice makes perfect is not right. It should be practice correctly makes perfect. And to me, this kind of in business, it's obviously, I mean, the whole thing just makes sense on its own. If you start doing, like, practicing business and practicing sales, and you're practicing the sales wrong, you're going to mess it up. If you're practicing your business wrong, you're going to mess it up, and then you're just going to screw it up pretty much until you'll have to unlearn and relearn. But for me, it kind of struck as like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. And this will probably strike a chord with anybody who has any experience with martial arts. Like, for example, my brother, he's an MMA trainer. He does martial arts. I used to do martial arts too, and I used to. I took a break when I really should get back into it. I did martial arts with a Japanese katana. It's a Japanese sword. Art was Iaido and Kendo. It's fencing and martial arts. But one big problem in my specific martial art is that you have to learn how to hold the sword correctly, because it's a big chunk of steel, and it's not very light, and you're swinging it pretty fast. And a lot of problems that arise from people who do this without good training is that they start holding the sword incorrectly, and they get used to holding it this way, and then they start perfecting all the moves and all the motions and blocks and holding and positions while holding the sword incorrectly. And they permanently learn how to do all these moves while holding the sword incorrectly. And the reason this is a problem is because again, you're holding a heavy chunk of steel, and if you're swinging it while holding it incorrectly, after a few years you're going to mess up your wrists. You can get carpal tunnels, you can get wrist sprains, you can get aches, you can literally damage yourself to where you cannot do that martial art at all going forward, because it'll just hurt too much to do that. So you permanently screwed up your wrist. And in order to fix that, because you went from the base step of holding it to the more complex step of moving and doing all your stuff while you're holding it, now that you're permanently ingrained how to do this stuff incorrectly, you have to go back all the way to the beginning, learn how to hold the sword correctly, and learn all the moves that you have done again almost from the start correctly while you're holding the sword differently. And the reason you have to do it again almost is because every time you're going to do it from now on, your hands will want to slide back into the same position that you got used to, which was wrong. And martial artists others will probably tell you the same thing. If you learn to do something very basic, first step, incorrectly, all the steps on top of that will be done incorrectly as well. And then you'll have to go back and unlearn all of that stuff from the very beginning and have to relearn it. And it'll be a lot harder than having to do it correctly from the very beginning. And actually, this is the same even in business. In my economics and finance and business training, I learned a lot of stuff in my university about how that stuff works. And then later I learned that a lot of that stuff was actually not exactly correct. And then after I got my master's in economics and finance and business, I had to learn and kind of unlearn some of this stuff to kind of figure out the more correct ways that things actually work. I've learned probably as much, if not more, about economics and business after my university, just from self-education, than I did from my bachelor's and master's combined. And same deal with business. I've learned how to think and how to do the wealth kind of stuff in one way, and then I learned that, oh crap, I was not actually thinking about this the right way, and then I have to go back and change my mind and redo it correctly again. So yeah, practice doesn't make perfect. All practice does is make it permanent. If you want to be perfect, make sure that you're practicing perfectly from the very beginning. Excuse me. So anyway, that's just kind of the very, very, very tip of the iceberg of just like the big picture ideas, and then a lot of the rest of it was like much, much more kind of detailed, like this is how you do that and this is how you do this, and kind of there were some other big picture ideas, but they're more kind of in my specific business type of stuff. If I explain them, you probably wouldn't get them unless like I spent another hour explaining my history of what the business is going and stuff. But yeah, very, very nice day. I mean, I came here just to provide support for JT, and I'm gonna give you my secret to success. Sorry, it's at the very end. If you're still stuck with me, you're the lucky one. So how did I end up where I am with regards to cryptocurrency and business, where I know like almost all the top people in the space, and they know me, and I get to hang out with them and talk to them and interact with them and have dinner with them. So how did I get there? Even though I mean, honestly, I was consulting in cryptocurrency. I was investing in cryptocurrency. I was there since the beginning. I put my face out there, but my biggest involvement was I was a community manager for one of the bigger companies, and I kind of helped run that company for a little while. But how the hell did I get there in the first place, and how did I get to here where I am in the first place? And here's a secret. Show up. Every Bitcoin conference that was out there, I would do whatever I could to get to. I would buy the ticket, I would fly there, and I would show up. I was a nobody, but I would show up. Why? Because here's the thing. A lot of business conferences have people, the same companies, go set up tables and market, and that's all they do. They go market here, they market here, they market here, because that's how businesses and startups typically build recognition. They have to go out there and put their own faces out there, and a lot of them show up at the exact same conferences. And a lot of them together show up at the same conference. Like these 5 companies will be here. These 5 companies will also be there. They'll also be there. They'll also be there. And because they all show up at the same conferences, they end up, getting to know each other, because like, hey, this guy's at the table next to me, and this guy's another at the table next to me. And yeah, also in entrepreneurship, there is obviously competition in business, but people like to learn about who their competition is. They sometimes like to work together. There's a lot of kind of friendly competition going on. There's a lot of kind of discussion back and forth. And it's also just like, we're all people. Like, hey, I've seen you like 5 or 6 times so far, and, we kind of build a relationship. So all of these companies show up everywhere, and they know each other just because, they're everywhere together. And I show up at every business conference too. And the reason is every time I show up, I come by, I say hi, I talk, and they see this. They recognize me, they see me as one of the regulars, they see me as somebody who just shows up to almost all the things. They don't know who I am, they don't know that I'm just there as a attendee. I mean, maybe I'm there as somebody who works for the conferences, maybe I'm there representing some business. They don't know that doesn't matter. What matters is that they recognize me, they see my face, and they start to trust me because I become one of the people who is kind of in the group. And then eventually what happens is they recognize you, they start to trust you, they start to build a rapport with them as you're talking back and forth and discussing how things are going. You're learning from them too. And maybe you learn something from one guy at one table, and then you kind of relay some useful information, not like company secrets, but like, hey, here's a business tip, or how things might be going, or whatever. So you kind of end up as an in-between teaching and sharing information, like showing them like how to do stuff. So eventually, you're still just an attendee. You're still a nobody, basically, but you're attending every conference, and now you're recognized. You're seen as somebody who might even contribute, and you become kind of one of the guys, so to speak. And then once they trust you, one thing, by the way, at conferences, from an attendee side, you come in. Here's a conference. You meet a bunch of people. You see the presentations. Then you go back to your hotel room, and that's it. All those business guys, all the top people, like I said, they usually hang out together. They also, a lot of times, they go to dinner. Like, the best parts of business conferences are the dinners afterwards, because that's when all the top people get together and they hang out, and all the crazy backroom stories get told, all the crazy business stuff gets revealed. That's a place to be. And if you show up and they recognize you, eventually you'll get invited to those dinners, and then that's where things start to get very interesting, because you get to learn a lot more about who the people are. They learn more about you personally, and if you have any kind of a skill, there's a good chance that since they trust you, they'll probably ask you if you can help with that skill first before they go for somebody else. So that's, I mean, it's complicated. It takes a long time, but the main thing is you stick what you have right here out there until people who the movers and shakers of the world start to recognize you. And that's how I got it in my Bitcoin position, where I know all these people, is I put myself out there and I contributed as much as I could. I talked to as many people as I could, and I just became a trustworthy person who does consulting and helping and blah blah blah. And then eventually end up friends with, like, people who put on some of the biggest conferences in the world, people who start like some of the most recognizable brands and companies and all that kind of stuff. Because in business, it's, I mean, you hear this, it's a cliche almost. It's not what you know, it's who you know, because you know stuff already, especially if you've been listening to all these people. But the who you know will be the people who will help put what you know into practice. So anyway, yeah, that's how you do it. And the reason I brought this up is because the reason I came here to JT's today was because it was just another 2-day kind of his 2 days are kind of like the initial initiation, like, let me teach you about business classes. And I mean, he always teaches new, useful, interesting stuff. The reason I came here was because I wanted to show support to JT, who I'm very thankful for doing all the coaching for me. I wanted to add more butts to the seats, just to add more numbers to his class, to kind of make numbers look better. And I wanted to have this be recognized among the people who come and among JT and his coaches too. Because like, if I would show up once a year or maybe even twice a year, it's not going to be much of a relationship there. I mean, there's going to be a little bit, but yeah. But if I show up, and again, I'm not like, I mean, I am contributing by like maybe talking and helping him out and defending him on Facebook when a bunch of haters jumped on him. But for the most part, all I'm doing is showing up. You show up, you put your face out there, talk to people, build the relationship, they'll trust you, and they'll take you further and further with them. So that's why I was here, is I wanted to support JT, but also I wanted to follow my secret to success: show up. And it actually paid off in a pretty big way. I'm not gonna tell you how, but it was successful. So yeah, whether you're doing Bitcoin, if you're doing Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, go to as many Bitcoin conferences as you can, because that's how you become one of the regulars. If you're doing real estate, find a RIA meeting. Go to each RIA meeting you can, because that's how the guys who are way up there will know that you're one of the people who are actually serious about this, instead of just somebody who shows up, dabbles, and leaves. Any kind of business you're in, go to the business conferences, go to business meetings, whatever kind of field you're in, show up. Even if you're just starting out, you're a nobody, just you show up, you get recognized by people, and you build rapport. That's how you do it. That's how you make yourself a somebody, is by effectively being a somebody in a sea of other somebodies. So anyway, this was quite a long one, but I'm really hoping you got a lot out of it, because, well, these 2 days I got quite a lot out of it too. And I'm very happy to share some of this with you. And if you want to get in touch and talk to me and find out more, or get some sort of personal one-on-one or whatever, or if you have any questions, like, I am an open book. If you have any questions about anything, please let me know. I'll be very happy to get in touch and talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. Well, I mean, to a point, of course. But anyway, that's it for this very long day and this very long video. Thank you for sticking with me, if you're still sticking with me, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow, heading home, but I'm heading home much later in the evening, so tomorrow's recording will be very late, because I think I'll be getting home about midnight. So mostly I'll just be working from the hotel room, and I have a lot of stuff on my to-do list that I did not have before, which is great, because my to-do list was starting to feel a little short. So business coaches are great at filling up your to-do list. But anyway, that's it for today. So I'm gonna pack up and head to bed, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.